Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. All right, so in the last couple of weeks, a number of different reports have come out which are reflecting on the condition of employment and the economy in general. So, first of all, we already know that air travel has been down roughly at least 70% compared to last year. And then Yelp came out with a report that said that 60% of the temporary closures that have happened, business closures that have happened this year, 60% are now permanent closures. Now we've got tens, hundreds of thousands of people that are working from home. I'm going to make a little comment here that I'm really surprised that we had not been moving this direction a lot more in years leading up to this, because it's something that just makes sense. It reduces costs for business and makes business literally more efficient. So the fact that it took the pandemic leading up to these conditions being forced upon us meant that these changes, just happened all at once. If they had happened over a period of time gradually, they would have had a slowly repressive effect on certain aspects of the economy, but it wouldn't have been this sudden crash. When workers are working from home, then you don't have to pay for other expenses. All right, another study that report that just came out from the lodging industry states that 75% of hotels and lodging businesses are expecting to lay off more people by the end of this year. That's on top of the ones that they've already laid off. So that doesn't even mean that the employees that they retain will have full-time work. It makes no mention of how many will be underemployed at that point. There are reports that hotels are going bankrupt, shutting down. Even some of the largest, most successful, oldest hotels in the country, highly established, they are closing down because they cannot survive the current conditions. None of this would be solved if the pandemic just ceased to exist right now. These conditions have been coming. I've been saying that these conditions have been coming for decades. We have not been prepared. Our economy, our government, corporations have not even tried to prepare for this, even though it was completely predictable. If I, sitting in my living room, can see this coming, and have been able to see this coming for at least the last 12 years, then these so-called experts, they saw it coming too. The rich people, they've seen it coming. They've known it has been coming. which is why they have not spent money building out more infrastructure, creating more jobs, etc. Instead, they've been using bailouts and interest-free loans from the government and the Fed to prop up their stock prices, even as the general economy has been circling the drain for at least a decade. Anyway, so right now we are at the point where all of this becomes cyclical. The airlines, because of lack of travel, are within the next week, because they're not being bailed out again, are expected to lay off hundreds of thousands of workers. Hotels are expected to lay off hundreds of thousands of workers on top of the ones that they've already laid off, and probably cut back hours on many of the workers that they still retain. We've got dozens of corporations lined up declaring bankruptcy from reorganization to complete liquidation. Recent report from last week was that new jobless claims were around 900,000. But they claim that ongoing jobless claims have eased up. Well, that's not true, because what has happened, and we've already heard these reports, that many workers that were laid off temporarily got called back to work, only to be laid off again. Well, what is happening, put this together with the bankruptcies and closures, and what is happening is that these workers that were temporarily laid off got called back long enough to liquidate assets or to ship off assets to other locations for liquidation. Basically, they were called back long enough to strip the shelves and close the doors, clean out their desks and their lockers, and then they're unemployed again. They're laid off again. What happens when this occurs is that you are initially laid off, unemployed, and you file for unemployment. Then you get called back to work. You're no longer considered unemployed. Now you're laid off again. This is considered a new claim for unemployment. So basically, you were pretty much unemployed because your job was doomed anyway. And with these business closures, those jobs are not coming back. They are permanent. They are permanent. Oil fields being shut in. They say that this is temporary. How temporary? A year? 2 years? 5? 10? How temporary is this? When you shut down entire oil fields, you can count on it being basically a permanent situation. You can blame the pandemic, what have you, for whatever you want to, but this has been coming. Now, if the pandemic ceased to exist, if it was declared no longer an issue at all today, we would still be in the same situation and facing millions of job losses over the coming months. When you eliminate jobs, you eliminate income. When you eliminate income, you eliminate consumer spending. When you eliminate consumer spending, you eliminate profit, which drives more businesses out of business, causing more bankruptcies, more job losses. This is what we are facing right now. To give tax breaks and so forth to the rich and to the corporations will not create jobs when they have only used the money to buy back their own stock and drive up the value of their own stock and put the money in their pocket and pay out dividends to their investors. This is the flow of money from the bottom to the top. It is aided and abetted by the Treasury Department, by Congress, and by the Federal Reserve. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They care about the rich. 85% or above of all stocks are owned by the top 10%. At least 35% of that is owned by the top 0.1%. So they keep getting richer, you keep getting poorer. You get laid off, the money saved from your wages go to bonuses for corporate executives and stock dividends for investors, just before they declare bankruptcy and eliminate your job for good. So this is all a cycle, and this cycle is going to continue. It's not just a cycle, it is a downward spiral. It is our economy circling the drain. Meanwhile, guess what's happening in China? Retail sales are up, which means employment is up, which means manufacturing is up. We've heard all this talk about the Chinese banking system and currency collapsing. Well, as the Chinese go back to work, guess what they're doing? They are investing in the Chinese stock market. So, what is the difference here? Well, when China had to impose quarantine, what did the Chinese government do? They gave money to the businesses to sustain those jobs. They paid the wages, at least a large portion of the wages, to the employers to pay the employees. Whereas our government subsidized unemployment, which literally gave the corporations an incentive to lay you off and not maintain the existence of your job. Once the quarantine in China began lifting, the Chinese people walked back into their jobs, back into their wages, at the same rate that they were getting paid before. Their production began increasing. Their spending went back, has been increasing back to where it was. Their investing is helping the Chinese companies to invest more, to expand manufacturing even further. And this is all happening while China is divesting from the dollar. So, with our government subsidizing unemployment, our government subsidized, gave the excuse for companies to shut down completely. You're gone. And even if you were to be able to get called back to work, it's most likely going to be at a lower wage. Our economy is going to continue suffering for years. Our currency is going to decline. It is already in the process of this. Do I have any advice for this? Not really. All that this is for is just awareness of what is going on, what is coming. Stop believing that there's going to be some V-shaped recovery or a W-shaped recovery. No, there's not going to be a recovery for a long time to come. The nearest projections for a recovery, say 2023, but realistically, it's going to be a lot further out than that. We have hit the end of capitalism. This is in stage capitalism, as predicted by Marx. The reason China is able to survive is because they do not have a capitalist economy. If the pandemic just ceased to exist, right now, we don't have the manufacturing capacity to compete with China. We're not going to have the manufacturing capacity to compete with China. We don't have the oil producing capacity to compete with Saudi Arabia. Not at this point. So, without consumer income, you've got no consumer spending. Without consumer spending, you don't have an economy. So, all the people that keep on raging against socialism and keep cheering for capitalism and saying that capitalism is going to save us, capitalism is what got us here. And it is not going to save us. Capitalism saves capitalism. Capitalism saves capitalists. That's all there is to it. All right, so we've got to rely on each other. Stop hating on each other. We need to be there for each other as much as we can. All right? That is our only hope. And yes, we need to move far left. There can be no delay. That's it. We've got to move far left. Incrementalism is not an option. You know, all this stuff about like pragmatism, no. It is not going to help. All right. Please share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can, which I know not many of you can, please donate $1 a month to help expand the channel. And I will talk to you in the next one. And have a good day.